Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Community Development Scrutiny Committee. My name is Councillor Diana Garrett and I'm the Chairman. Members, before we start, I'd just like to make a few points of note. Please can I remind you that this meeting is being webcast, that there is no fire alarm test scheduled for this evening. However, should the fire alarm sound, members are asked to vacate the chamber via the fire exit to the back and assemble in the car park. As we move through the meeting, can I remind everyone present to turn off their microphones when they've finished speaking? And I'd also like to take this opportunity to welcome Councillor Tom Cunningham, Cabinet Member for Economic Growth, and Natalie Sadler, Marketing and Communications Officer. Thank you for your attendance this evening and we look forward to your presentation. I'll now proceed with the business of the meeting. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. Apologies have been received from Councillor Mrs Wilson and Councillor Miss Weeks. Have there been any other apologies received?
I'm not aware of any other apologies, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. So there are no more apologies. We will proceed to agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Do members have any disclosable pecuniary interest, other pecuniary interest or non-pecuniary interest that they wish to declare this evening? Please state the item and the nature of your interest. No? None at all? Then I'll proceed to item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. Please can I have a proposer to approve the minutes as an accurate record of the previous meeting of the Community Development Scrutiny Committee held on the 31st of August 2022. Councillor Wright? And could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Corsina, thank you very much. The minutes have been moved and seconded as an accurate record. All those in favour, please indicate. Lovely, thank you very much. No one against or in favour. The minutes are approved. I will just sign those minutes. Thank you. Right. We will proceed to agenda item 4, public question time, but members, I can confirm that there are no registered speakers for this evening's meeting. So we will proceed to agenda item 5, the scrutiny review into markets and associated events in the Braintree district. And this is our third evidence gathering session. Right, members, this marks the third session for the scrutiny review into markets and associated events in the Braintree district. As previously mentioned, we have a few attendees joining us this evening. They are Councillor Tom Cunningham, Cabinet Member for Economic Growth, and Natalie Sadler, Marketing and Communications Officer. Emma Goodings unfortunately couldn't attend this evening. To support members' evidence gathering for the scrutiny review, a presentation has been prepared this evening by Natalie. I'll invite members to ask their questions immediately following the presentation, unless Natalie would prefer otherwise. Is that okay? Lovely, thank you. So, Natalie, could I please ask you to commence your presentation? Thank you.
Oh, sorry. I was asked to provide a presentation around what we as a marketing team do to promote the market and specifically the street market in Braintree Town Centre. Can we move slides, please? So traditionally we've always offered limited marketing support to both Braintree and Witham traditional markets. Houseted Market is run separately by the Town Council, so it's not one that we focus on. We've been promoting the street market since it began in March 2018, and the first event was on the 31st of March that year. We use social media, PR, both local and regional, outdoor advertising. We feature it in newsletters. We have various newsletters that we send out, parish councils, residents' news updates. We have a tourism newsletter, and it features across all of those platforms. We also use posters in the town centre. We've got a couple of poster sites, one at the train station and one by the pharmacy in town. We also update staff using our internal social emails to inform them when the latest street market is happening. And we use partner marketing as well, using various platforms that we can. Visit Essex promote it for us as well. So this is just an example of how we have promoted it in recent times. So we use our social media platforms. We've got a Braintree Markets Facebook page and a Braintree Street Markets Instagram channel. We've used Contact Magazine, so we just spread on Visit Braintree District, and we used a panel for the street market. We've produced media releases which have gone out to Essex TV, that have been featured in the Braintree and Witham Times and Essex Live. And some of our free magazines that go out to residents in the district, including the Community Ad magazine, have done features on it. And we've had some really big posters blown up for the side of George Yard car park to promote the market as well. Using social media, so our aims of social media are attracting new traders, increasing footfall to the market, which in turn increases footfall to the traditional market and also to the stores within the high street. We want to increase spend by promoting some of the products and encouraging people to have an uplift in their spending, and we want to support existing stalls within the traditional market as well as the newcomers in the street market. And there's just some examples there of some of the feedback that we've had from some of our traders. They travel around various locations within the South East, depending on where they're based and how big their businesses are, and they seem to be quite happy with the social media that we've been putting out. So before each street markets, they happen once a month on the last Saturday of the month, and then the build up to that, we would introduce the store holders on Facebook and Instagram. So anybody that's got an account is tagged, and we would make sure we mentioned all of them at least once in that build up. And we share the posts to community groups. We want to draw in people from communities on the edge of the town centre. So we look at Notley, Kings Park, Fairview Estate, places where you could perhaps walk or cycle or travel quite easily into the town centre for the market. And it's looking at a wider audience rather than just those people that are in the town centre on a daily or every other day basis already. We want to bring in new people to the town. We post to Visit Braintree District as the market channels, and we also cross-post to our core channel because that's got the widest audience, and we know we reach a greater number of people that way. And we also reshare some of the best content that we've had from the previous markets. During the event, one of us will attend each month, whether that's myself or one of my colleagues, and we chat to some of the store holders. So if anybody's new, we would do an individual feature on them. We share live content on the morning of the event, so trying to get people there later in the day that are perhaps still debating whether or not they want to come into town on the Saturday. And we share post stories because we know that's where we get the greatest engagement rather than actual posts. I don't know if that video is going to play. Okay. After an event, we will do a thank you post and a roundup for the traders and for shoppers that have been, and we start to share some of the stories that we've picked up from the event. So there's a picture there of Jessica. That's her first market last month, and we introduced her. She's a local artist, small business, and she wants to make some Braintree designs for her Christmas cards this year, so we introduced that to our audience. Doing it post-event, it gives us a chance to do a much better job than we could do on the day when we're actually at the market. And we also promote it looking for new traders, so we're trying to show traders the kind of support that we offer so they might be enticed to come along, and we appeal for newbies to join us. We also share dates of future events. So here's some posts that we have shared within the Braintree Hub. Is one of the biggest community groups in Braintree, and we know it's really effective at bringing people in, so we often share posts in there. And the post in the middle is an example of one of our new traders sharing the market, and it's really good to see that organic content going out there and them trying to promote the market and the stalls themselves. And there's a really close network at the street market, so they all tag one another, share each other's stock and presence. It's a really good way of networking for them online, and it works really well for them. So here's our social media stats for August. We have got in total 3,500 followers across the 2 different platforms. No, that was right, sorry. Yes. We get most engagement on our Facebook page, which is indicative really of Facebook. It's the biggest platform on social media. And Instagram is where we're trying to focus our stories, because we know that's the platform we want to build. And then that just shows how many views we've had of our content. So across the 2 platforms, it's about 40,000 for August. We produce media releases, and we share them with the traditional media like the Braintree and Witten Times and Essex Chronicle, Essex Live. But we also look to share them with radio, influencers and community publications, because we want to reach a wider audience rather than just those reading traditional media. Back in July, we had an influencer come visit the market and share some of the food events, which was really interesting and reached a whole new audience. Some of our promotions led to us being branded one of the food capitals of Essex, which is really good because Chelmsford is traditionally known to hold that title. It has a really good food market, so the fact that we were put on a par with them is really impressive. So this shows some of the influencers that have featured us. The piece on the left is a video insert that you might be able to see at a later date. And that shows a montage of clips from the Essex foodies who came and visit. We gave them a tour of the market, and they had some samples from some of our stalls. And they've got a really big following, so it's really good to see them featuring our content. They've been to the Flitch of Bacon and other really renowned places, so to visit Braintree Street Market was a bit of a coup for us. And then just some other influencer activity that we've had. This just shows some of the partners that have been sharing what we do, James Cleverley, and it's just really good to see that others are sharing our work and it reaches a much wider audience. You're more likely to see content from groups that you follow than you are perhaps our account. If you don't actually follow Braintree District Council or visit Braintree, you won't see them, so other people sharing our work for us means that we can cast the net further. And this is just a snapshot of some of the feedback that we've had. The traders really like what we're doing, and we've been told that we put a lot more effort into the social around the street market particularly than any other authority, and that's one of the reasons that they come back to us. So, time invested. In the week leading up to the event, I would spend about 2 hours a day working on social media releases and other pieces of content around the market, contacting influencers or media outlets, trying to encourage them to run our content. On the day, I would visit and spend about 3 hours uploading content and creating that content. And then in non-market weeks, it's probably about 2 hours a week that we spend working on it. During COVID, we obviously couldn't run the street market, only food stalls were allowed to operate. So we set up the virtual street market, which was an online networking event, and we tried to connect potential shoppers with traders, and we encouraged people to log on at a certain time each week or each month and share their goods, and people arranged delivery from home because we wanted to carry on supporting our traders until they could return to the market. Some of the feedback we have had is around our Wednesday market, that there's not as many stalls there as there used to be, and whenever we promote the market on a Wednesday, we get really negative feedback about that, so we've had to limit what we do on that market because it just creates negativity. We feel that perhaps there's too much competition for those types of stalls on the market, perhaps that leads to some of that negativity, and that we've people have suggested that perhaps we could look at artisan-style stalls during the week as well as at weekends that might bring in more people. That's the kind of feedback that we're getting from our residents.
Thank you, Natalie. Is that the end of your presentation? That's really good. Members, before I invite you to ask questions, please be reminded that questions should be based around the terms of reference for the scrutiny review, as it's intended that the information collected will contribute towards the committee's evidence gathering. Members, can I take questions, please? Councillor Cassina. Use your microphone, please.
What's the demography of our customers, those who usually attend? Would we say they are those advanced in years or middle years? Or?
We've only got real anecdotal evidence, really. We haven't got any actual statistics on this. From what we see when we visit the market, we get a lot of families that come along and try some of the food stalls, and because of the way the market is set up, it works really well for families because they can buy different types of food for each member of the family, perhaps if they've got a different pace, and all sit together in the seating area, and you get slightly older people as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I come to Braintree Market every week, and a lot of people from my town also come to Braintree Market on a Wednesday because they come for the bank, because we don't have a bank. And when they come to the bank, they then have a little look round the town as well. And I find the two most popular stalls that you have is the fruit and veg man and the fish man. The fish man has got very good quality fish on it. Most of the other stalls, I don't know how you encourage them to be more appealing to people. I mean, today there was very fruit stalls there.
Can I just say something on the Wednesday market? I appreciate, the feedback compared to a Saturday. It's not as vibrant. What I would say, I think I've noticed since COVID and since the pedestrianisation has been largely finished, certainly the Wednesday market is nothing like as good as it was when I was a child 30 years ago. I'll be very honest. Wednesday in Braintree Town Centre was absolutely humming. But there are a few more stalls than there were. Whether it's more people are sitting outside, there does tend to be a little bit more of a buzz than there were a few years ago. I think when we were looking at markets, and particularly the street markets, Jen, forgive me if I'm straying off here, but I thought it would be useful just to give a bit of background and to help colleagues here. Street markets on these monthly Saturdays were as a result of a lot of deep diving, a little bit of soul searching in the town centre, of which the council played a part, but it was primarily retailers, community groups, and indeed residents. Back in the summer of 2016, our local paper was putting out headlines saying Braintree Town is either dead or dying. Now, a lot of towns at that time were suffering traditional decline in retail habits, sort of over the first sort of decade and a half of this century, and sort of hit Braintree more than some. And perhaps Braintree didn't at that time have the resilience to respond as well as, I would say, Whittam and certainly Halstead. A number of reasons. I don't know if it's the make-up of the town centre. There's not the main through road that goes through it. I don't know. Part of Braintree's charm is its slightly rambling layout. I don't use that pejorative term, it's a characterful term. You know, you have the high street. I think if you were designing a town from scratch, you probably wouldn't, as a perfect layout, you probably wouldn't design it like Braintree, but that's its charm, the rambling high street, the gaps, and the mixture of the new precinct blending into the old roads. And we actually sat down and reflected that actually Braintree's charm isn't championed enough. Braintree's location isn't perhaps championed and utilised enough, being this a large town in a predominantly rural area. You know, it used to be where people came to market. And as a result of that sort of work, we realised that there's a percentage of residents who thought, right, actually, what Braintree really needs is a Primark. Oh, forgive me, we were never going to be in that league back in 2016, certainly not now in 2022, the change of retail. Our units in the town centre are not compatible with that type of store. And obviously our close proximity to both Colchester and Chelmsford would preclude that. We're sort of almost equidistant between two retail hubs. So what we thought, well, what could Braintree be? What could we sort of, hang our what could we hang Braintree's characteristics on? And I have to say, it was this idea of buying and shopping local, the best of local produce, of which we are best in this part of Essex with that. That was part of the visionary session which informed pedestrianisation. But the first thing that we brought forward was the street markets back in 2018, and from a slow start, a relatively slow start, it quickly gained momentum, and full credit to the officers at the time. It was Anita Thornbury, who many may know, who was the acting head of service then, who really led on some of this work, and our own internal team, and latter years, Stephen Wenlock, who was actually the authority's architect, but actually took on a lot of this work and really got the market going. They really captured the imagination, worked with existing retailers, worked with the existing market, because when we're looking at doing a market, we always wanted to make sure that we didn't start using terms like upmarket, market, or things like anything that suggests, of course you want a different range of products, but anything that excludes or in any way undermines the heart of what Braintree Market always is about. And for me, Braintree Market will never be Braintree Market unless it has its fruit and veg and its fish stall. That's how you complement that. So our loyal traders who have been loyal over the years, we sort of wanted to complement what they do and support them, as opposed to being in conflict. And I think largely we've done the odd operational issue, dare I say, maybe once in a while, but I think the authority has done a very, very good job in managing that. So it had gathered momentum. The first quarter of 2020, the market was in a fantastic shape, but of course everything changed all of a sudden. I was personally delighted and thrilled that, like so many things that happened during that COVID, everyone sort of responded in an innovative, let's carry on regardless. But I think the virtual markets were a great success. I remember being sent to BBC Essex, which I was pleased to do, to promote it. It really helped capture the imagination at different times. And of course, once restrictions were lifted, we were able to continue not only with our regular markets, but also our Saturday, our special street markets. And it's been great over the last year to see how enthusiasm and momentum for that has built. It's, despite whatever's happened over the last 3 years, I don't think people talk about Braintree Town Centre as dying. Braintree Town Centre, like so many towns, has still got its challenges. Too many empty shops. You are starting to see a switch from traditional retail to the place where people come and spend time, socialise, eat, drink, helped largely by the new public realm, but that sort of switch was starting to happen anyway. And I think going forward we can be optimistic about that, but bearing in mind the really important role something as relatively as simple as concept as a street market concentrating on food and a drink initially has really helped turbocharge that. What I want to just say in conclusion, you've seen and looked into how resource intensive this is or not for the council, and Natalie gave a very clear idea of the communications ask on that. We are absolutely blessed in this authority in terms of the communication talent we have, in terms of right across the board, and Natalie is a talented member, one talented member of an extremely talented team, and it's a resource we're very privileged to have, and a skill set we're very privileged to have. And of course, again, that has really helped turbocharge publicity of that. Going forward, when you look at the role of our council, and particularly Braintree Town Centre in isolation, it may well be that we may have to step back from some of these things and actually be the helpful enabler rather than the all-and-out organiser of this. We may have to have that conversation in the future with the town, and that actually perhaps maybe the town itself needs to take on some of these responsibilities. But that is a conversation for another day. I think if we had COVID, I think those conversations would have been a lot further on. And there's been talk in the past. We've had town team talk about it at the Business Improvement District. And I think we have to appreciate the needs of our current retailers are still very much at that necessitous stage in terms of survival, ensuring their businesses are there tomorrow before we take the next step. And whatever that journey is, we will play an active part as a supporter and enabler, but obviously the emphasis has got to come from the town, and I think that's the conversation we have over the next few weeks. But we do look back on this period with a certain degree of pride. I think we have created something fun, or helped create something fun, something that has, above all else, brought people into the town centre. People start talking about coming to Braintree when they wouldn't have necessarily otherwise done so, and I think that hopefully bodes well. And it is thanks to the resourcefulness of the authority, and I would say cross-departmental buy-in of this. We are very, very fortunate. You have Natalie's team, you have the economic development team, you have the operations team. They work together on this. I think sometimes their areas of responsibilities overlap in a positive way, and it's not, and they form an extremely effective team in delivering that. And I think that's been very, very important. But as I say, we look back with a certain degree of pride in what has been achieved with these markets, and we look forward to hopefully their continuing success, as we can all hopefully look forward to better times in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham, for those words. So you're thinking about having a conversation whereby you step back from organising, and
I don't. Well, I think possibly whether step back from organising our role in the organisation. You know, whether the authority has to be the one that goes and collects the pitches, whether that's done by another group within the town. I think the council has, as I say, has been supporters, but also has had to show leadership on this. And perhaps maybe there is a time that now that we've set the foundations of how these things work, whether the town and the retailers want to step in to that space a little bit more. As I say, it's not a conversation that we had overnight, but I think looking further down the lines, because we have to be realistic, calls on offers of time, calls on resources of the authority. We have to be very honest about that. And we do have obligations, which we take very seriously, to our other two town centres. And quite rightly, when the question is asked about I separate capital projects from this sort of increasing footfall, this sort of economic development work that we have done. I do draw a line in the sand on that, but we have obligations to our other town centres. What I would say is we don't ignore those obligations, but if we look back to 2016, Braintree was in a far worse place than the other two towns, regrettably.
thank you. I've got a couple of questions. I'll just stick with Councillor Cunningham at the moment, and I'll come back to you, Natalie, if that's all right. When you regenerated the town centre, you talked about people sitting and eating and talking and chatting, but I haven't seen any benches provided. Are you relying on, have I missed them, first of all, or are you relying on other trading tables and chairs
Give me an answer. Do you mean on the markets or in the town
Just
centre?
generally in the town centre and in that vicinity. As you said, it's a bit rambling, so I haven't actually scanned the entire area.
There are some benches in the market square, and there has been a sort of suggestion, well, should we have put more in? It's difficult because, particularly in the market square, we wanted that to be a versatile, all-purpose space, really, to facilitate events. When we have the market, and I think it's still the case, it tends to be the Great Square, which is at the top of the hill as you merge from the market before you turn down the straight part of the High Street. That has become the logical food court, wasn't it? This was Stephen Wenlock's great idea of putting them all in there. I don't know if it was by choice or by good decision writer, but it worked extremely well back in 2018, and that has become the sort of the congregational area on the street markets. We do have, although it's pedestrianised, we don't have total unfettered access to the high street all the time. During the day, early in the morning, it still has to facilitate deliveries for the traders, and also we have to make ensure there's emergency vehicle provision. So we have to factor those into our event planning. But what we are starting to see, and what we hope we will see, is that you're starting to get the coffee shops now sitting outside in all weathers, enjoying sort of cafe culture, Costa, toast, bar, is it 32 at the end there? Sorry? 92, forgive me, bar 92 at the end. You've got the vegan coffee shop, I think, now, where you can... And the Phoenix, of course. The Phoenix now in Bank Street, which was great to see. So you are starting to see that, as well as the Turkish restaurant, of course, in Bank Street, which has been a great success. But so slowly but surely you are starting to see that switch, and hopefully, provided things pick up and people have a reasonable amount of disposable income, you will start to see some of those empty units on the high street becoming more of those coffee restaurants, coffee shops, bars, restaurants. What we do have an issue in Braintree, and where we have had a deficit, is those quality nighttime establishments. Compared to the choice of restaurants you've got in Halstead, and particularly in Witham, Braintree is regrettably a poor relation. And by actually, hopefully, the public realm will hopefully sort of stimulate a better sort of I wouldn't say nighttime economy, but nighttime spend, social spending in the town centre.
I agree. It would be nice to attract some businesses to undertake that challenge. Have you contacted local businesses who have not raised their head about potentially having a market stall? I know that in the rural area that I live in, which is up in the Bumstead Ward, there are little businesses tucked away that make things. I know there is a company that makes fire pits, for example, and lots of artisan and art type things. Have you actually asked them or considered having a market whereby they could come and display their goods as maybe a one-off, just to see how that would go, perhaps?
Do you want to have some?
We have the team have pop-ups that people can hire, and I think that's quite unique to Braintree. So for a small sum, I think it's about £20, you can hire a gazebo, and it means that we have lots of first-time businesses coming to the market. We have a young chef at the moment who has explored different types of street food, and he's now settled on steak sandwiches, and we did a feature on him recently, and he came to Braintree because it wasn't a huge expenditure. He could come, hire a pop-up, test the market. He realised that his first venture wasn't working, and he then altered his business plan to something that does work, and he's now looking to trade at other markets. He's bought his own setup and he's looking to buy a van, and we've had the same with some of our small makers. So we have bakers and makers. So we have lots of craft stalls. We have local beekeepers that bring their products to the market, and several of them have started by using our pop-ups and establishing if there is a trade for them before they invest any further in their business. And we also have some of the shops from the town centre that come out on market days, and they run a stall so that they can signpost people to their shop for the rest of the time. It's a really good way of them promoting their businesses. And again, they would use our pop-ups to start with because they don't have that infrastructure, even though they're an established business. And we've got several companies that now do that as well.
That sounds really interesting. Have you actually sent letters out to companies and invited them to attend a particular market for that purpose?
No, we haven't
So away
sort of
from
singled them
Braintree.
out.
Yeah.
We do promote that via social, and our most recent media release that went out for the Christmas market asked for new traders to come and join us and promoted the pop-ups.
Do you think that small organisations might be receptive if they received a letter from Braintree Council inviting them to show their wares?
I certainly think so, and absolutely it chimes with the whole idea of promoting the best of local products. I think what has been very successful is that the Braintree street markets have really tapped into for want of a better word, a fraternity of those who provide goods and services to markets. Word of mouth, I think, has played an enormously important role in growing the appeal of the markets and growing the range of traders. There is a fraternity out there, and I think Braintree is now very much plugged into that Braintree street market. But absolutely, I think any suggestions that we can do.
I think that might be one of my recommendations, is that we put a feeler out to see if those, such as I've just mentioned, might be interested. So to go a little bit further out, maybe just have it as a one-off and invite them. And as you say, the pop-up fee is just £20. So it might be something that they would be interested in to stimulate, to bring people into Braintree. I do feel sometimes that some of our rural districts are sort of left out, and there doesn't seem to be much of a merging between the two. So to reach out to those, I think, would be a good idea. Councillor Mrs Dervish, do you have a question?
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you. It's just to follow on regarding those areas slightly out. As you know, I represent Turling. We have a bus, just one bus, every week. It comes at 10 o'clock through Turling and goes to Braintree for the Wednesday market. It's the only transport that comes through the village. So I think to expand on that sense of advertising as well, although I see that you've done an amazing job on social media, is there anything else you do other than social media and the Braintree and Witham Times, maybe like a leaflet drop or posters, to sort of really advertise in those rural areas and bring the crowds in, really? Thank you.
We had a feature in the most recent edition of Contact magazine. As a rule, we try and avoid leaflet drops because of our sorry, I can't think of the words. Because we always try and look at climate change and the impact that would have. So we do try and avoid leaflet drops where possible. We used the poster at the train station to try and bring in commuters that perhaps come via Braintree, but perhaps travel in from further afield within the district. And the community ad magazines are used, as I mentioned. So they're free magazines that go through people's doors in certain areas. So they go to Housestead. We have quite a lot in the Notley area, and we use those. And then social media is our other one. But leaflet drops, although they're effective, we do try and avoid that.
So it's probably also worth clocking that that we contact parish councils. So there's a newsletter that goes to parish councils every couple of weeks. So if you've got parish newsletters and you know of who runs it in your area, it's worthwhile just making sure that the parish clerk is then linking up with that parish newsletter.
Councillor Wright.
You said you do a lot of marketing around Braintree Market. Do you do any around Witham?
We cover parts of Witham, so our Facebook channel for the markets is Braintree Markets, as in the district markets, rather than just Braintree itself. And we would promote what is happening in Witham on a Saturday from time to time, but the primary focus would be the street market. So yes, we do, but not as much as we focus Braintree.
Right. Well, Natalie, I think... Oh, sorry, Councillor Corsina.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Cunningham, for the deep dive into the Braintree market. I have two questions. One is, first, the schools. Are we able to market through the schools? Because you said families do come to the market on the Saturdays. and probably there's going to be a school break, so there'll be a need if we could do market through the schools. And secondly, is there an impact of the free port on the market, or could there be a cross-sell? Because I know that people who come from everywhere to the free port. Is it possible there could be a cross-sell?
We do find that the schools are already bombarding parents with information about their own activities, so we find it hard to get them to cover events for us. They have covered more recently the skate park consultation that's happening across Braintree, Witham and Housestead because they have a real vested interest in it. But I think we would really struggle to get them to cover the market just because there's such a fight already for space within their newsletters. But it's a really good idea because it's really popular with families. We know that George Yard, around school holidays especially, tend to do a lot of activities and that draws families in, so we try and tap into that as well, and we cross-share with George Yard about our activities to try and get people to come in, perhaps take part in the children's activities in the morning, visit the street market for food at lunchtime, and perhaps buy some homemade items as well.
And I would just say Braintree Village, particularly since it made that switch from Freeport to Braintree Village when it was purchased by Landsec, and I want to say back end of 2019, I think it was before the pandemic. It's a very different relationship now, and it's a better relationship. And I think you're right. I think there's more that we can perhaps do with Landsec and for them to help promote this. And I think they'd be very receptive because they very much see themselves as complementing Braintree Town Centre, because of it's a different offer. You come to Freeport, for an instance, Braintree Village attracts a considerable hundreds of thousands, millions of people. Been very supportive, but I think you're right. There is more we could perhaps do with them to help promote what we do in the town centre.
Councillor Mrs Powell.
Yes, thank you very much. I think one of the assets that you've got in Braintree, attracting people in, particularly in the school holidays, is the museum. You've got the dinosaur trail coming up. I know people who I've forwarded it on to let them know. They will come and they will do the market and other things as well. But one thing that you need to watch, in Braintree today, I counted 3 rough sleepers. Groups of rough sleepers, that they're coming back in again. That detracts people because they sit there with their legs out, which is a trip hazard. And they're expecting people to give to them. And also today, I was talking to David Mann because he was there collecting legally with his collecting tin, and there was these people accosting people, and David told me that they're called chuggers. I mean, do they have a licence? Because you're supposed to have a licence to collect in the town like that. And that puts people off because they don't want it. So I think you have to be aware of what is going on as well that could detract from
respond to that?
Chairman, if it's okay, Sherry's happy to deal with the sort of the chuggers and the homeless issue. I wouldn't mind just saying something about the museum when Sherry's finished. Thank you.
First, please.
So I think we need to be careful when we're referring to people as rough sleepers, because just because they're sitting in the town does not mean that they are homeless or don't have a home to go to. So we just need to be a bit mindful of that. It would be helpful if there is begging, then if you let us know. And if there are people that are collecting and you don't think they're collecting in the appropriate way or have the right permissions to do that, then again, if you let us know, we can get someone to look into it. But in relation to people being rough sleepers, that just because they're sitting in the town doesn't necessarily mean that's what they are. So just need to.
It's just the danger aspect of them laying on the ground as they were, which is a trip hazard, and particularly on Wednesdays, you get a lot of elderly people in the town.
Yes. Okay. Councillor Cunningham.
Sorry, just to say about the museum. I think Councillor Pell's absolutely right. And the good thing is when we did the sort of the preparatory work for this, the museum were one of those key, to use that word, stakeholders who are sitting around the table. And when it comes to joint events, joint initiatives, they're very much on board and supportive. So that's, they're a very much important element in not just and just not in terms of being a destination, reason why people come to town, but actually supporting the wider town centre effort.
Thank you. I think that under the economic circumstances, I think markets are going to be way more popular, and hopefully we'll be prepared for that. And if we can reach out to some of those organisations to try and bring them in and have a stall, that would be lovely. Natalie, your presentation was remarkable. Thank you. Absolutely faultless. I mean, the work you're doing is phenomenal. You're covering every base that I can think of. That certainly those worthwhile places. And yes, parish councils do need to feed out that information. They have their own social media, and it would be quite nice if. I just don't think that things always get posted. Sometimes parish councils sit and then they don't always feed out that information, which is, unfortunate. We need to try and find a way of getting that out. But I can't see that you can do anything else. You're doing posters, you're doing everything. So really good news. And I've had a look at it on social media, and it is really stimulating, I think, and would draw people in. The problem, as we've mentioned, is that some of the transport from the rural areas is lacking. And with the cost of fuel these days, people are just unwilling to travel from my part of the district, which takes us, 40-45 minutes to get here. So it's pulling people in. So if we could have a special special market like the Christmas market, and maybe talk to organisations about having particular travel in place for those people, and just see if that works. It might work, but it's more work, isn't it? It's got to be worthwhile and not too cost prohibitive. I understand. I think Councillor Corsina has another question.
Not adding any more work. I was just going to ask of TikTok and YouTube. Have you considered them?
At the moment, we're not using TikTok. We feel it doesn't necessarily reflect the audience that we want to reach. We tend to use Instagram Reels, which is very similar, and it means that we can focus our efforts on those platforms. I'd really love to explore TikTok more, but with the resource that we've got, we kind of want to do what we do well rather than trying to do a little bit of everything.
No, I appreciate that. Any more questions, anyone? Councillor Hensman.
Sitting and listening to the various dialogues, it gives me food for thought with the market. Perhaps market it differently. So you said bakers and makers, or some sort of strapline like that. That sounded pretty good. The one thing that residents moan about, because I represent town centre, is parking. We had a visit to Malden last week, and we found that the car parks do not charge disabled or motorcycles and so on. We do. It may encourage people to come in. Talking to the CEO's enforcement officers, they were saying the frustration is with the bay marking, in that the bays where I think it's Daniel Robinson and Subway have been erased, and that is instant ticket. The bays in front of the museum have been marked, but they are the equivalent of double yellow lines, and people don't understand the marking, so it's not helpful, and those bays are full, and of course we're going to get a lot of people who are going to get tickets, because now they've been marked, they can enforce it, and they're saying they're giving them a week or two's grace, and then they will hit them. And that's not the message if you want to get people in. To work with Landsec, we've lost as was Freeport Free Bus. That's disappeared. Now we've got the bus interchange. It's still marked on as a service, but it's not there anymore. Could we encourage perhaps park and ride from Braintree Village up to the town and back again? So you can either use the Braintree Village car park, or their own customers could go up, but have a connection in such a way that we are working together. Because, for example, the previous town centre regeneration, there was a brass plaque in the floor outside Tesco's, which was, I think, 2004, and was this work has been paid for by Freeport as part of it, Section 106. But now we've redone it, that's all disappeared, and there's no connection between the two, so we're not advertising Braintree Village and they're not advertising us, and it's disjointed. So I know the demographics are different. For the say, here, let's inflict this on you when we do the works. Because I know Whitton, for instance, has a private market on one day and Braintree's market is Saturday, is that right? So it's the understanding of the mechanics, and Whitton will say, well, why work in progress? And even then the work that's being done, there's remedial works already going on, and that was apparent last week with the orange barriers that have suddenly appeared. So I know there's constraints on what you can tell us and what you can't, but you've done a big job on Braintree Town Centre, and it's let's make it work. So if we can be on message and get people to come in, then there are other barriers.
Through you, Madam Chairman, I may respond to some of that. First of all, regarding parking and the policy aspects, I'm sure that's been clocked, and that's others could respond to that. But obviously, there's an operational issue in terms of white lines and things. That's obviously a matter for the council as part of NEP. Regarding your points relating to Braintree Village and the bus, you're quite right in the fact that there is a historic Section 106 commitment for a service between Braintree Freeport and the town centre. We are having discussions about that to ensure what was a historical commitment back in, or what thought was a useful solution in 1998 or 1999 when Freeport opened, really trying to refresh that and make it more of a relevant solution for 2022. And we are having ongoing conversations with Landsec about how we do that, realising we're in very different times. But you're absolutely right, it hasn't. The connectivity between the town and Braintree Village has not fallen off the radar, I can assure you that.
Councillor Cunningham, Councillor Henderson mentioned trees and potential street furniture. Are you able to elaborate on that? Do you have?
Yes. Unfortunately, because we've had actually finishing the project has proved to be difficult. The public realm project, predominantly reasons due to pop-up power supplies, energy networks. It has been extremely difficult. There are still, I'm understanding, there are still some more trees.
Bike, as I like to call it, which is a better explanation. Is there anything going in for that? Because it's quite. I found that the cycle storage is quite some distance from the market area.
We did. These were part of our initial discussions. I'll need to clarify that.
Okay.
We'll make sure the clarification.
That would time the cycling strategy if we had that in place. And I also would like to encourage a map of cycle parking, because, as I've said, I don't like to cycle anywhere unless I know where I can leave it safely, because they're not cheap anymore. And to pop into the market and pick up a few bits is a cycling exercise. Really, be quite nice. I don't think we have any further questions, do we? Oh, there was one, but I'm not sure actually if it would be an economic development question. With the cost of energy now, we do supply electricity or gas to some stallholders, don't we, particularly for food purposes. Do you know if there is an extra charge for that, or if that charge would be going up under the circumstances that we find ourselves in now? Or is that a question I should pose to economic development?
It is a conversation that we've had with economic development and how we deal with that, but I think they need to answer that one. I don't think I have enough information on it.
That's absolutely fine. I'll ask Jessica to make a note for me. Thank you. I don't believe there's anything else. Members, right, well, thank you, members. If there are no more questions, on behalf of the committee, I'd like to express my grateful thanks to Natalie and Councillor Cunningham for their time this evening.
Thank you very much for inviting us. Good.
You're welcome. And for the contributions to the scrutiny review. We will update you as our review progresses and copy you in once the final scrutiny report has been produced at the end. So, members, I will now proceed to the final item on the agenda, urgent business. However, I'm not aware of any urgent business for this evening's meeting. Please be reminded that the next meeting of this committee will be on Wednesday, the 7th of December 2022, starting at the usual time of 7:15 p.m. We will use this meeting to look at a draft scrutiny report of the committee. I'd therefore be very grateful if members could give consideration to any recommendations or suggestions for inclusion within the draft report and forward these to to both myself and the governance team in advance of the next meeting. When you put forward a recommendation, there has to be a little bit of evidence behind it as well, so it can't just be a wish. I know we'd all like to say that, but there has to be some evidence to back up the recommendation, as it needs to be carefully considered before it's put to Cabinet. I will now close this meeting of the Community Development Scrutiny Committee at 2011. Thank you, members, for your attendance this evening, and to those watching via the Council's YouTube channel, and good night.